Hello everyone, in this video let me give you a very brief analysis of Wordsworth's preface to the lyrical ballads. Wordsworth explains that the first edition of lyrical ballads was published as a sort of experiment to test the public reception of poems which use the real language of men in a state of vivid sensation. So this experiment was successful, better than Wordsworth was expecting, and many were pleased with the poems. Wordsworth's choice of poems. When a poet publishes a volume of verses, his commitment to the readers is established. In writing the preface, Wordsworth's purpose is to explain to readers his reasons for writing poems which were so different, unusual, and diverse from the earlier period. In this way, the readers would be made aware of the changed perception and conception of poetry and not feel disappointed at the radical transformation that has taken place. Wordsworth has written poems with a definite purpose in his mind. His purpose is to choose incidents and situations from common life and describe them as far as possible in a selection of language really used by men. By relating common situations and incidents and using imagination, he aims at presenting the poems in an unusual manner and making them interesting. He discards the gaudy phraseology, artificial diction, and sophisticated themes. He rather concentrates on the simple and natural life of the countryside. According to Wordsworth, the humble surroundings of rustic life are more natural and unrestrained, and so this becomes a proper subject of study for a poet who must write on man, on nature, and on human life. Wordsworth's objective of poems. Poetry, according to Wordsworth, is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, and that it takes its origin from emotions recollected in tranquility. Wordsworth lays special emphasis on powerful emotion and intense feelings. The word spontaneous in Wordsworth's definition does not indicate immediate or sudden, rather it connotates natural or unforced. A poet is a man of unusual and exceptional organic sensibility. He is able to connect one thought with another, and in this way he can discover what is really important and worthwhile. The approach of Wordsworth's poems. Wordsworth asserts that he has not used any abstract ideas, and his purpose is to use the very language of men. He has never used personification as merely a mechanical stylistic device. He has taken great pains to avoid the use of all these poetic devices which constitute poetic diction. His use of language is accurate and sensible, though this has compelled him to avoid the use of phrases and figures of speech that have traditionally been used by poets. What is poetic diction? Poetry differs from prose, and the use of poetic diction is one of the sources of pleasure as rhyme and meter, and so its usage is justified. He recommends the use of a language used by men, and this selection of language should be made with true taste and feeling, and thus the language of poetry would be free from the coarseness and vulgarity of ordinary life. According to Wordsworth, meter is not essential for poetry, for there can be poetry even without meter. Meter is merely pleasure superadded. What is the function of poetry? The good poetry must possess organic sensibility, and that the poet has contemplated long and deeply. Wordsworth comments, Our feelings and emotions are modified and directed by our thoughts, which are indeed the representatives of our past feeling. Wordsworth hopes that his poems would extend the dominion of sensibility and ascertain the light and honor that would benefit human nature. The poet is the upholder and preserver of general human nature. He discovers universal laws of nature and communicates it to the readers. In spite of differences of climate, language, manners, laws, and customs, the poet binds together different aspects of human society by his capacity to sympathize and share knowledge. Poetry is the first and last of all knowledge, as it is as immortal as the heart of man. Wordsworth emphasizes the fact that if labors of man and science would ever create any material revolution, poetry would then act as a complement of science. Now let us look into the Wordsworth theory of language. Wordsworth's theory of poetic language is a reaction against the neoclassical theory of poetic diction. Wordsworth's theory of poetic diction is of immense value when it is considered alongside the neoclassic use of poetic diction. However, there are a number of contradictions and limitations. Wordsworth does not state what he means by language, which is a matter of vocabulary and syntax, imagery and figures of speech. Wordsworth gives importance to imagination and regards imagination to be worthier than reason. He appears to be advocating the neoclassical stance with regard to generality and universality of poetry. The preface is probably the most valuable document in the history of English criticism. It helps to bring about a divergent perspective regarding poetry and the theory that Wordsworth most sought after.